First of all, I want to, seriously thank you for this opportunity to tell my story. I don't take this lightly. God has blessed me in many ways during my life. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. I have 2 sons, a daughter, 2 daughter-in-laws, and a son-in-law, and 7 grandkids. And as a result of Branson being here today, I got to change one word of my speech here. I've been retired for going on 4 years, and like Brody says, I come down here and volunteer, and Snowbird's been good to us for a lot of different reasons. And I get support out of Snowbird like everybody else. I attend the morning meetings, and I've grown close to the staff. It's a great place. God's blessed me in the fact that I've been able to, and I love to hunt. I love to hunt and fish. I've been on many hunts. Went to Colorado, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, Ontario, Quebec, Alaska, and Newfoundland. And one thing I wanted to say about that, each of these locations has a different beauty. And if you haven't, shame on you. But if you haven't taken a look around this morning, I don't understand how you can go to places like this and not see that it was created by a God. Again, I'm honored to tell my story, and I consider it an obligation. Problem is, I have the same difficulty when it comes to hunting as I do public speaking. If I'm up in a tree stand, all these years that I've hunted, and a deer comes, and it doesn't have to be a big buck, it can be a little spikehorn or a doe for that matter. As it gets within bow range, I start getting nervous and excited. I guess it's one reason I like bow hunting. Public speaking, on the other hand, I got some other excuses as well. Well, you throw in my inability to speak in full sentences, my lack of social skills, and many other valid excuses, which after the end of this, you can come up to me and point them out if you want to. Bottom line is, I don't think I'm the right man for this job. But, and so many other things in life, it doesn't matter what I think and like. We got to do things. Well, on September 2nd of 1997, I was attacked by a grizzly while on a 15-day float trip in Alaska. This was to be a trip of a lifetime. I gathered up all my 4 weeks of vacation, and my brother and I, brother Randy, headed up to Alaska. Now, prior to this trip, I prayed, and my brother had drifted away from the Lord, and I prayed that this trip through me, or the trip itself, would give an opportunity to draw Randy back to God. It did. It also had some impacts on me as well. Anyways, on September 1st, we set down with float plane on Tutna Lake, and that's about 200 miles northwest of Anchorage. We inflated a raft and headed downstream. There was a stream flowing out of the lake. And we went a little ways. We had to cross a beaver dam. There was some northern pike. They were small, and we caught a few of those. Got up to the beaver dam. We pulled the raft across and went a little ways further and made camp. In Alaska at that time, you couldn't hunt the same day that you flew in. As a result, you could basically spot a moose and go after it. So that's the reason they don't let you hunt the first day. Anyways, we set up camp, and we're kind of goofing around. I climbed up a spruce tree at camp and tied a white plastic bag up in the spruce tree, making like a flag. And On September 2nd, woke up. It was a frosty morning. Remember, there was a caribou that crossed the stream as we were having breakfast. We both had moose permits, and we also had another permit where we could take like a caribou or a lesser species. But moose season hadn't opened up yet. So the goal for me that morning was I was going to head one way and head up to a mountain, and I had a spotting scope, and then I was going to look for moose. And if we had seen moose in the area, we were going to stay at that campsite until moose season opened up and then go after the moose. Previously, I had hunted in Quebec, and I was able to take 2 caribou there. Unfortunately, the plan was to get one with the rifle and one with the bow. I took first one with a rifle, and then I had my rifle and my bow with me, and went out to scope with my rifle the shoreline, and out come this nice caribou. Well, I took it with a rifle. So anyways, this time up in Alaska, I intentionally left my rifle at camp and took my bow. My brother went with his rifle and his .44 mag. So later on we thought, well, probably should have given the .44 mag to me. Another thing is I headed in one direction and Randy headed in the other. He had to use a raft and go across the stream. Every time I tell this story, of course, it brings up the fact that my wife wanted us to hunt together, and I might have promised something to her. Anyways, I was heading towards this mountain, and I spotted some caribou off to the distance. And so I changed my course of direction and went after these caribou. And they were quite a ways away. And as I approached them, one young bull saw me, and off they went. So from there, then I headed back towards that mountain. So I changed my direction again. And this course of direction took me over a creek that was pretty deep, but it was narrow. So I was able to run and jump across it. And then beyond that, there was like a floating bog. If you've never been on a floating bog, it's like walking on Jell-O, if you will. It's a mat, and then there's water underneath. So it just is real squishy, and I've never really fallen through one of them, but they do make me uneasy. Then from there, I continued to the mountain, and right before it dipped down. There was a draw, and that whole morning, we're hunting in basically open tundra. So you can see a long ways, and the likelihood of running into a bear is slim to none because you can see such a distance. Unfortunately, as I went into this draw, it got thick. And I had only gone in about 30 to 40 yards, and off to my right, a bear went running off, angling, to my left side, and it was a sow, and there was 2 to 3 cubs that stayed. And I knew I was in trouble with those cubs staying there. I started backing up. I had my bow with me. Had plenty of time to put an arrow on the rest. I elected not to, and I guess a couple of different reasons. They tell you about bears. Bears normally do a false charge rather than attack you. And I didn't want to make a bear mad by sticking it with an arrow. And then in 85, I had shot a black bear, and about the same size, in fact. It was about a 350, 400-pound bear. It scored 19.14/16, which makes it Pope and Young bear, and shot with a gun. If it was just a little bit, I think 20 is a Boone and Crockett. So it was a pretty good sized bear. But when I hit that bear, it was over bait. I was up in a tree, and it flinched, and it went right back into the bait. So whether that was going through my head as well, I'm not sure. But anyways, I decided not to shoot at the bear. Within a minute's time of it running off, it came running right back at me and stopped about 15 feet from me. it's awesome to see a bear in the wild. It was a grizzly, and I've never seen a grizzly that close. So, I mean, okay, this is one thing that's going through my head, but there's another thing going through my head, too. You know, it's 15 feet away from me. In fact, I said two things out loud, and this is where I got to use a different word. It was something like, oh, shoot. But I got the second half right. I said, forgive me, Jesus. It's something I did wrong at this point. I made eye-to-eye contact. Don't do that if you come across with a bear, or actually, I think that's the same with dogs. It can provoke an animal to attack, and I'm not going to argue the fact because it did attack. It, 15 feet was like nothing. It was on me in a flash. To me, it seemed like it was over in seconds. My adrenaline was pumping at 100%. It was like in slow motion, but my mind was racing. As far as playing dead, it made that fairly easy in the fact that it hit me, which I believe it hit me on my right side of my chest. Ribs are broken on the left side, but I went face first down into the ground. I put both arms around my neck and throat. Bears in a sow, basically all she was trying to do is eliminate a threat, to her cubs. Bears are known to go for the head and the neck, and that's certainly what she did. Luckily, here I use the word luckily again. At the end, I'll use that word one more time. My backpack was pulled up over my head and neck, and she went towards that. I had a spotting scope in that, full set of rain suit, a jug of lemonade, and she tore into that, broke my spotting scope. It occurred in what I thought in seconds. She bit my right calf. I had 2 pairs of pants, hip boots, and even though she didn't puncture my flesh, I do have scars as a result of the force of the bite in my calf. She bit my back thigh with her teeth, tore in quite deep, sunk all her claws in my back. And then I had 3 ribs that were involved, and I have a total of 5 breaks. They're pretty effective at eliminating a threat. If you've ever skun out a bear, a bear is not built like a human. Their arms are, solid, and in fact, a bear has been known to break a moose with just the swipe of the paw. I was very fortunate in the fact that the cubs did not get involved. When I described the cubs to people that know bears, they told me that those were more likely a 1.5-year-old cub rather than that Springs cub. And if they had gotten involved in the attack, it would have been game over. Like I said, the sow is just eliminating a threat. A cub at that age is going to get more playful, and they wouldn't stop. I'm not sure if I said this or not, but during the attack, I thought 2 things. One was, I'm ready, Lord, and the other is, I don't want to go yet. I laid still for about 15 minutes. I was able to see my watch, and I forced myself to just lay there. That was very intense in the fact that I never heard or knew which direction the bears left. After 15 minutes, and as I'm laying there, actually, I'm hearing a gurgling sound, and it's like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. That turned out to be my jug of lemonade that had been punctured. Anyways, I got up and I grabbed my bow and a roll of toilet paper. And I'm not sure why I grabbed that toilet paper, whether I was... You can figure that out yourself. I don't know. There was rain gear, a real nice set of rain gear, a nice jackknife. Spotting scope was busted, but there was other things I could have picked up. But quite frankly, I wanted to get out of there and not go in any direction that the bears were. Didn't take me too long to get out that 30 to 40 yards, into the clear tundra. And then I kept on going. Had one problem in the fact my right leg, I could only make a half stride with my right leg. Anyways, I went quite a ways, and I finally decided to take a break and sat down. When I got back up again, I started getting dizzy. So I decided that's not going to do that anymore. I'll pace myself and just continue to go. I had about 2 miles to go to get back to the tent. And where we set up the camp, there was by aspen trees. And I had actually written in a journal that morning. So I knew pretty good what direction camp was. And, of course, the fact that I'm going straight back to camp rather than in the morning I made that zigzag as a result of going after those caribou. I didn't have to cross that creek. I didn't have to go across the floating bog. It was basically a straight path, and it was fairly easy walking. I came walking up on a pretty nice caribou, and we looked at each other, and it went on its way, and I went on my way. From that first set of aspen trees, I was able to see a second set and headed towards those. And that turned out to be camp. I never did see that plastic bag that I had tied up in the spruce tree. My brother, on the other hand, said he saw it all day long. He could, really stuck out. I climbed into the tent, and heading back to the tent, my goal was to hit that right on. I didn't want to hit the stream and then have to figure out whether to go upstream or downstream. So I wanted to, minimize my exertion. Anyways, I climbed into the tent, grabbed my rifle, and shot 3 sets of 3. My brother had an interesting morning as well. He headed off in his direction, and he thought he saw another hunter in camouflage. Now, we're in the bush, 200 miles, northwest of Anchorage. Probably unlikely you'd run into a hunter. And the other thing was weird is the fact that Randy didn't go up to talk to him. He just kind of turned around and headed towards camp. Later on, he said that might have been an angel. Well, I can't say one way or the other, but it did impact him. Anyways, he came. It didn't seem but a short time, and he came up to the other side of the river, and he must have seen my legs hanging out of the tent. And he said, "Hey, do you shoot your gun? I got attacked by a bear." Yeah, right. And he didn't believe me. His brothers, that's kind of typical. And he had to take the raft across the stream. And once he got up to the tent, he saw a little blood on the screen, and sure enough. And I'm laying on my back in the tent, and basically my shirt's been ripped open, my coat's been ripped, so my bare chest is there, and I'm laying down. And you can see 3 full sets of claw marks, but just superficial scratches. And they went across my chest, across my belly, 3 swipes. And there was only one that was, here that was fairly deep, 1/4 of an inch, that was bloody. And that's the only thing that he saw. And as a result, he had to capture this as a Kodak moment. He went and got the camera and took a picture. So after that, I got into a disagreement with my wife just the other night as far as what happened first. And so I had to call Randy and clarify a couple things. Number one, the guy in camouflage it wasn't white camouflage. I've told other people it was white camouflage, so it was green camouflage. But anyways, and then the other thing where my wife was right again is the fact that the first thing he attended to was my leg. He must have seen some blood, and as a result, that was the other thing. On the way back, I'm a little bit in shock maybe, but I'm oblivious to my condition. I remember reaching back and touching my thigh, and I didn't see any blood. My shirt's ripped open. I'm pretty sure I got broken ribs because I got shortness of breath, and it hurts. But that is about all I know of my condition. I don't know about my thigh. I don't know about my back being torn into. And my brother kept all that from me as well. But when I lifted my leg, he was able to see, and it was quite deep as far as the rips into my thigh. And he was able to see a tendon that moved in and out as I moved my leg. Well, he's figuring 14 more days that we're going to be out in the bush. And I'm looking at him like, why are you getting so queasy? And I'm kind of poking fun at him. As a teenager, he worked at a meat market. He's been hunting as much as I have, so he's seen this shouldn't be that bad. Well, from a different vantage point, you're on a 15-day float trip with your brother, and you're seeing something that could potentially, end his life. So anyways, he pulls himself together and bandages up my leg. And then he explained to me the other day that, I was just planning on changing your clothes, helping you into some clean clothes. And I couldn't sit up. I had a hard time sitting up. So he got behind me and pushed on my shoulders as I sat up. And then he heard air. And he looked down, and he could see into my chest cavity. Well, he got real queasy at that point. And again, he's seeing it from a different vantage point. He's thinking that he might not have a brother for long. And I'm looking at it like, hey, pull it together. You could be in, such a girl. Anyways, Randy bandaged me up, made camp in what seemed to be just a very short time, broke camp, hauled everything down to the raft, helped me down there, changed into some clean clothes. I had a real thick, winter jacket, and I had that on. One of the biggest problems I had is the fact that I'd forgot that I had those hip boots on, and I had that garter strap on down by your calf, and I had that tied, and I didn't think of it, and he's tugging away at those boots trying to pull them off. And it took a little while to figure that one out. And that was some of the most pain I was in at that time, is I had a Charlie horse in my right leg, and it was severe. But it's funny, too, how your mind blocks stuff out. Like the pain during the attack. I didn't have any pain during the attack until about a year later when I started thinking, you did have. That was... mind plays funny games sometimes, and I guess it's for our good. Anyways, he broke camp, got me in the raft, and he rode for 6 hours. He elected to go back upstream because we hadn't gone very far down that river. He got up to that beaver dam, and the previous day we had both gotten out of the raft. This time I stayed in the raft, and he ripped apart that enough to get water flowing through that dam where he could pull it right through. He continued to row, and big problem he had was the stream wasn't flowing real hard. It wasn't a high flow rate, but it was a narrow stream with tag elders on either side, and every once in a while he'd hook tag elders, and he'd lose the momentum that he had. So that was quite a bit of a challenge for him. We ended up making it back to Tutna Lake, and then from when we got to the lake, you could see at the far end of the lake something white. And so he headed towards that. And it turned out to be some tents. There was 5 senior employees from Fish and Wildlife Service that were up hunting. So we made it to their camp. They welcomed us in their camp. And there they changed my bandages. Right as we were approaching their camp, the sun is starting to set, the temperature's dropping, and I'm starting to get the shakes. And whether, temperature related or the fact I'm going further into shock, I'm not sure. They also had some medicine that had codeine in it, and they gave that to me. And I'm sure that helped as well. Again, they were keeping my condition oblivious to me. The 5 guys, though, as they're walking around looking at my wounds, and I remember them hitting each other and, trying to keep it quiet from me as far as what my condition was. They did have a radio that would make line of sight. So one individual stayed up all night long, and it wasn't until the next morning that a plane flew over, and it was a large plane, whether it was a commercial or up there's Air Force bases that are, fairly close to where we were hunting. And they made contact with the plane. Unfortunately, they had given the coordinates, and they didn't get any confirmation that the plane received that, and it was out of range. But another plane was just following that one. It wasn't long at all, and they did confirm that coordinates have been received. I remember them saying, send in a helicopter. And I'm thinking, oh, no, I'm going to have to pay for a helicopter. So, anyways, about an hour and 15 minutes later, a float plane landed on Tutna Lake, taxied up to the camp where we're at. And the medical technician come walking up the hill about the same time as I got my coat on, and I'm heading down the hill. And he just looks me over real quickly, and as soon as that pilot was able to tie off the plane, he was up there as well and informed us we had to go, that cloud cover, the lake was going to be socked in if we didn't get out of there. And my brother said, sure enough, shortly after taking off, the fog came in and socked in that lake. So from there, they flew me to Clark Lake, and there's an adjoining landing strip on that lake. So they taxied up to a dock, and then from there transferred over to another plane. From there, they flew me to Anchorage, and the hospital is adjoining the airport. So again, they taxied up to the hospital, and there was a nurse there with a wheelchair. They wheeled me into the emergency room. First thing that they're concerned about is a ruptured spleen. Turned out I didn't have any problems like that. And then the doctor asked me, well, first of all, I asked the doctor, if he had any experience with bear injuries. And he said no, but I think he was from like Chicago. So he said he had plenty of experience with knife wounds. So then he asked me if I wanted to call my wife, and I thought hard on that one. This is not going to be easy. So, and I got a partially deflated lung and broken ribs, and so I'm whispering. And I tell my wife that I got attacked by a sow, and she starts laughing. You got attacked by a cow? And then I had to, let her know that my condition was not severe and that there's no reason for her to come up to Anchorage. My vacation had just started, and I got another close to 4 weeks of vacation to go. And so, anyways, I spent a week in the hospital. I got my lung reinflated. They had a drain tube out of my chest. They put drain tubes in my severe wounds. And after coming out of the hospital, we rented a pickup truck with a camper on it, and brought along my nurse, Randy, and we drove around the Denali Highway. And Denali Highway is pretty bumpy. So they gave me some pain medicine, and I took those as needed. I had pillows stuffed behind my back. And but I wasn't in that much pain because I was able to catch two, they were silver salmon. They were turned red at the time, some of the best fish I ever caught in my life. And then, of course, Randy wanted to take the rod from me, but that didn't happen. And I took some pain medicine after catching them. But anyways, I was able to catch a grayling as well. It was, and Randy was able to do some hunting as we drove around the Denali Highway, but not much. Once we got back to Anchorage, our outfitter was kind enough to fly us back into the bush. And we spent, 3-4 days back in the bush, dropped off on a lake. And this is in 97. The movie The Edge was just playing. So when we were in the hotel prior to the hunt and all that, we were seeing these little snippets of the movie. And it's a silly, silly show. It's about this, this bush plane that runs into some geese and crash lands. Anyways, the one part of the picture is where this guy's running through the woods being chased by a grizzly bear. No, I don't think you can outrun a grizzly bear. Not for any distance, anyways. Anyways, they teamed us up with two other individuals. One was an emergency room physician, and the other was a pharmaceutical salesman. So it's kind of a weird, the fact that I just got attacked by a bear, and they teamed us up with these other two guys. Anyways, the four of us are in this plane, along with the pilot, and we're going over the Alaskan range. It's a mountain range, and it's just phenomenal. A couple times I went over it, basically the pilot goes and makes a loop to gain elevation and goes over. And it's over the top of it is glaciers every direction. I mean, no place to land if you had to. Anyways, we're going across the Alaskan range, and we run out of gas in the one tank. The pilot acts like nothing's wrong, reaches up, flips over to another gas tank, hits the start button, pum, 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 and away we go. Of course, the four of us, and especially my brother and I, our eyes are, about that size, looking at each other saying, here we go again, Anyways, they dropped us down on this other lake, and on the shore of the lake was a cooler. And we looked in there, and the previous hunters had left bacon in there. So we set up our tents, and the first thing we did is made bacon sandwiches. And one of the two individuals took the bacon grease without thinking and dumped it. It was like 10 feet from our tent. So I slept with my rifle that night anyways. And in fact, that did affect me. I was only able, I think, to go out hunting one day of that while we were there for caribou. And I went up this hill, if you will. And going through the thick brush, I a little bit more squeamish as far as walking through thick areas, after you've been attacked by a bear. So that did make me think a little bit more. And then coming down, I had to take pain medicine because the angle was such in my backpack. I wanted to tell you basically how the bear attack impacted me. Number one, I look at my life as a gift, which shouldn't be taken for granted, and consider it to be precious, knowing that it can end at any time. Yes, from time to time, I forget, but I am reminded in the fact that I have a chest that acts like a dented pop can. If I take a deep breath, it will crinkle, if you will. Or if I go, deep into a swimming pool, my chest will push in because it's just flexible. My right leg, I can feel pain once in a while, but quite frankly, nothing to complain about. I've been able to live an active life, and it hasn't really slowed me down a bit. Prior to the attack, I've often wanted to see God's physical presence in my life. Not sure what I really wanted to see. Maybe a burning bush, something like that. No, seriously, I was listening to worldly views and challenging God's word, whether it's evolution or on and on. When I tell my story, people commonly say, and I said it during my speak, that I was lucky. The reason I go into such detail of that path going to the mountain that went off and then coming back with straight, to me, I was not lucky. It was all orchestrated, and God showed me His physical presence in my life, and how He saved me from a bear attack. Through my life, I often learn from experience. You might be a good teacher, but it hurts a little bit. In this case, if you were like me or are like me, and you have doubt of God's word, of any of God's word, I challenge you to dig into it. Dig into it deeper. I fully believe the Bible is truth. It stands on its own and proves itself from cover to cover. I remember reading Lee Strobel's book. And, after reading that book, the book I think is The Case for Christ, and reading that book, what I read, I knew a lot of that stuff. The only thing is, Lee Strobel, he put it all together. And the way I look at it, and hopefully it makes sense to you, is, if lightning keeps striking in the same spot time and time again, it's got to be true. I mean, something's causing that lightning to strike time and time and time. The Bible, it checks itself. I mean, the historic proof of the Bible, the prophecy of the Bible, you can go on and on. It's just interwoven. It proves itself. Here I'm preaching to the preachers right now. Thirdly, I started this story with telling you my excuses of why I shouldn't do public speaking, and you know why now. But God has given me a story, and which I can tell that glorifies Him. So I want to thank you for your time.